No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live episode number 185. Nigel Farage under pressure as he loses it with the MSM lashing out at journalists over questions of the growing Rupert Lowe cancellation scandal, which I don't think is going away.
Nigel, Rupert Lowe's threatened legal action over reforms claims. It's interesting whether you'd be prepared to fight him in court on that. If he took you to court, would you fight him in court?
I shall look forward to it, thank you.
Nigel, just quickly on the same issue as Amy here. Do you think that Rupert Lowe is responsible for...
Yes.
Sorry, Rupert did say that he was asked to tone down his speech on Manscaped.
If Diane Abbott received online racist abuse, it'd be top of your early evening news. Because it's us, you don't care.
Where's it coming
you don't
from?
care.
How do you think you can tackle it?
Well, you're the journalist, you find out.
For what?
I often you supported your battles with Rupert Lowe or your or any of your policies.
I don't think you understand, you folks. You all work and live in media. You live in central London. You think the Rupert Lowe story is a big story.
Oh, I know. I get that most people have never heard of him.
But as he faces further resignations, pressure from Elon Musk and fresh criticism from Ben Habib, is Nigel really right there that no one cares about the defenestration of Rupert Lowe? Analysis in the digest next. Then Reform UK's under fire chairman Zia Yusuf speaks out for the first time since the growing Reform civil war, suggesting he would turn down £100 million from Elon Musk.
You have got serious interest from larger donors and stuff, but yeah, look, I'd actually be pretty uncomfortable and not that in favour of anyone giving us 100 million, any one individual.
Do we believe that? Standing by to deal with all of this, my fabulous superstar panel, outspoken political commentator and property expert Russell Quirke, and the independent broadcaster Charlie Sansom. Also coming up on the show today, Kemi Badenoch finally admits nut zero is impossible. But is Nigel Farage correct that it's too little too late from the Tories who administered this hell on our country? And the BBC, well, they've really lost the plot, forcing a presenter, a female presenter, to apologise to Eddie Izzard for calling him a man. This is truly bonkers stuff. I'll play it to you. Then on the uncancelled after show, speaking of bonkers stuff, Meghan Markle has been exposed for a sick St. Patrick's Day waffle stunt designed to bastardise the memory of the late Queen. There you go. Our royal mastermind, Angela Levin, here to reveal all on that. You can sign up to watch www.outspoken.live. Of course, we'll also reveal the greatest Britain and Union jackass before the end of the show, all chosen by you. And if you are watching live, you can vote for the Union jackass in our live chat. There are the nominees. James Timpson, nominated by It's Only Me 44. And that is the prisons minister, of course, for keeping 10,500 foreign criminals in jail instead of deporting them. Liz Kendall, nominated by Hills Hunter 01 for being shouty and angry all the time, referring to her statement in the House of Commons. It's exhausting just watching her. And Nadine Dorries, nominated by Nothrovich, and that is because of her hit piece in the Mail about Rupert Lowe. So 3 interesting choices there. First time nominees all. Who are you going to vote for? Get into the live chat. Let me know your comments throughout the show. I'll read out the best before we go. But now, let's go. It was inevitable. The pressure was always going to start to show because Nigel Farage is facing an onslaught from his members, the so-called online right, which I assume includes me and probably you, and now the MSM. But I hate to say it, he lit the match of this Reform UK civil war by standing by his chairman Zia Yusuf when he reported the party's best performing MP to the police for hurty words. But the swashbuckling Brexit king we knew and loved would face down these attacks, right? Because he's meant to be different from all the other politicians, especially when dealing with the corrupt legacy media.
Nigel, Rupert Lowe's threatened legal action over reforms claims. It's interesting whether you'd be prepared to fight him in court on that. If he took you to court, would you fight him in court?
I shall look forward to it. Thank you.
Nigel,
just quickly on the same issue as Amy here. Do you think that Rupert Lowe is responsible for?
Yes. Sorry. Rupert did say that he was asked to tone down his speech on Manscaped.
When the awful political editor of Sly News, Beth Rigby, attempted to get him to elaborate on his fanciful claim that criticism of Yusuf was all down to racism rather than his treatment of Lowe, this happened.
Said you were going to be the party to do things differently, but within months of returning to Westminster, you've already had to suspend one of your MPs. The party's riven by infighting.
No, it's not.
Do you acknowledge that?
No, it's not.
Okay. Do you acknowledge? All right. Do you acknowledge that the divisions could stall your momentum? Is it a concern to you?
No.
It's not?
No.
I was up in Lincolnshire with Andrew Jenkins, and some of your would-be supporters did raise it, and they said it was a concern to them. They were worried about what was happening, and they were worried that you were more of the same.
At the edges, there's concern. I said that in my talk earlier. At the edges, there's concern. But you've just seen 29 people enthused, leaving parties they've been elected for or represented for, standing for us in county council elections this year. And the truth of it is, out in the country, most people don't care about this thing, this sort of thing.
Well, it was raised by would-be voters.
I can find you would-be voters that will raise all sorts of concerns.
Okay.
But no, it's very much at the edges, it's marginal. And look, you know something? Can you imagine, given the complaints that have been made against one of our MPs, can you imagine if I'd not done anything about it? Yet had knowledge of allegations. Let's wait till the inquiry is over.
I just want to quickly ask you about that. You talked about one of your senior members suffering from racist abuse. Where's it coming from? How can you deal with it as a party? And does that mean there's no way back for Rupert Lowe in your mind?
I didn't say the two were directly
No,
linked.
but...
If Diane Abbott received online racist abuse, it'd be top of your early evening news.
But
because it's us, you don't care.
Where's it coming
you don't
from?
care.
How do you think you can tackle it?
Well, you're the journalist, you find out.
But there's a lot of concern about this narrative from within Reform UK. As Queen Natalie put it, straight out of the lefty playbook, posting a picture of Nigel alongside Zia with the speech bubble, anyone who questions me, Nigel, just call them racist. Meanwhile, the party's former London mayoral candidate, Howard Cox, posted on X, I'm so sad Nigel accuses many of us of racism against Zia. It's not his origin that's caused the furore amongst thousands of grassroots reformers. It's his divisive and dictatorial management of the party. I was proud to stand for twice. Too many good people have been thrown under the bus. Farage even lashed out at one of his biggest MSM champions, Julia Hartley-Brewer, on Talk, when she wondered out loud why Donald Trump hadn't backed him over the Rupert row.
I haven't spoken to him. He's rather busy.
He is.
He's on with a lot of things.
But we were given the impression you were friends. Is he not offered any support to you?
For what?
Offering support in your battles with Rupert Lowe or your or any of your policies?
I don't think you understand, you folks. You all work and live in media. You live in central London. You think the Rupert Lowe story is a big story.
Oh, I know. I get that most people have never heard of him. I get that.
Not a big
I'm just
story.
Given how much his henchman Elon Musk has been attacking you, has he offered you any support? Like, don't worry, I'm still with you.
No, and I wouldn't ask for it. You know, this is really, really at the edges stuff. If I wanted to pick up the phone and ring him or text him, I would.
It is worth digging a little bit deeper into that interview, though, because yesterday's hopes of reconciliation between Nigel and Rupert were sadly soon dashed.
Well, the timing of this is interesting, isn't it? I mean, you know, I didn't know that he'd been referred to this parliamentary committee over allegations of bullying in his offices.
Really? No one told you?
No.
Wouldn't your chief whip, Lee Anderson, have known?
No, he didn't know. He didn't know. We found out later. But the comments made to the Daily Mail were that we're a protest party, etc.
You're messianic.
Yeah, they were all made 2.5 weeks before nominations opened for those local elections. I mean, if he'd wanted to, he couldn't have chose a time that was potentially more difficult. Now, has it caused some turbulence? Of course. Has it on the edges caused some people to be disconcerted? Yes. Does it make a fundamental difference to what we're going to do on May the 1st? No.
But in the most intriguing exchange of this interview, and watch closely because he seems to be hinting that Rupert Lowe's growing online support is not genuine, which seems pretty paranoid to me.
Because one of the things a lot of critics online are saying, and yeah, online, not necessarily the same as real life, are saying, Nigel Farage has gone soft on immigration. What has Rupert Lowe said that is a problem?
Yeah. Oh, deporting entire communities, some of whom are born in Britain, I think is, how shall I put it diplomatically? Tricky, wrong, actually, at every level. And I think, you know, I mean, look, I don't want asylum seekers. I don't want young men crossing the English Channel. Hey, Julia, I was the one that blew the whistle on this over 4 years ago. But the idea that you take them, dump them on a Scottish island with a minimal amount of food and let the midges do the rest. I mean, you know, this is all language that's been used in the last couple of weeks. And frankly, it's just not responsible language.
You don't think that there's an appeal there because it's online, people are applauding and are very much supportive of it.
And a lot of those are very new accounts, which is really interesting. So you know, this has been taken online as an opportunity by some to try and disrupt as much as they possibly can. And there is an online community that literally want to fight a war against every Islamic person in this country. I want to fight a war against Islamism and the dangers that that brings. So policy differences have got wider in the last 2 weeks.
Now, I think you probably disagree with a lot that Nigel has said there. Certainly, I find the reaction to this genuine, and I don't think we're trying to stoke division. We just know that mass deportations are necessary to save our country. And in regards to his position on that policy issue, which remember is supported by 99% of Reform members, Rupert Lowe has clarified on X, more lies being pumped out around my position on the rape gangs. Let me clarify again. If a foreign national family member knew that their husband or brother was raping young white girls repeatedly and failed to act, then yes, they should be deported. I make no apologies for stating that. If that means thousands go, that means thousands go. What these savages did to vulnerable young girls on such an industrial scale was truly one of the most despicably evil acts I can remember. Anyone who enabled that should feel swift and brutal consequences, just like the rapists themselves. Prosecution for British nationals, deportation for foreign nationals, citizenships stripped from dual nationals followed by deportation. I want anyone involved in the rape gangs to feel the full force of the law. Now, there are also growing concerns about the defections to reform, not just from the Tories, but the Lib Dems and Labour too. This is Mandy Clare, alongside Nigel yesterday, and she was trumpeted on stage as one of these key defections. But her story is particularly interesting because Councillor Clare was a member of the Labour Party when first elected in 2019, but she left in 2022 to join the far-left Socialist Labour Party. She has since been a member of the Workers' Party of Britain, the Party of Women, and the hyper-local Winsford Salt of the Earth Party, before settling as an independent in July 2024. Meanwhile, Reform has been rocked by the resignation of Matthew Cook, another interim chair, this time in the party's Richmond and Northallerton branch. In a damning letter addressing all of these issues, he wrote, allowing in Remainers, Liberal Democrats, Labour and Conservative members alike to stand as Reform UK candidates is turning a party that stood for something into a party that stands for nothing. The handling of Rupert's situation revealed that Reform UK has no tolerance for debate nor for dissenting views. Rupert voiced his beliefs about mass deportations for foreign-born criminals and the cultural consequences of Islamification. Mr. Lowe was subjected to a sham kangaroo trial in which an outstanding and hard-working MP was cast aside with trumped-up, unsubstantiated charges. The relentless attacks from Reform UK's public relations team exemplify a ruthless purge of dissent, a betrayal of the fundamental British values the party claims to uphold. If Mr. Lowe is guilty of the charges of violence being thrown at him, then fine. These should be investigated, and if found guilty, he should indeed be dealt with appropriately. But in Britain, a man is presumed innocent until proven guilty. The Reform UK leadership have acted, judged, punished, condemned, and ostracised, however, without any credible evidence being presented. Now, to debate all of this, let me bring in today's superstar panel. Property expert, broadcasting legend Russell Quirke with me alongside the independent journalist and broadcaster Charlie Sansom. So, Russell, what do you make of all of this? Why is Nigel Farage lashing out? Even to your colleague at Talk, Julia Hartley-Brewer, who is an ally, really. Is he under pressure? Does he know that he's got this wrong when it comes to Rupert Lowe?
Yeah, he was pretty spiky with Julia. I've never seen that before, I have to say. I mean, that was quite surprising. Look, he's desperately trying to make this a non-issue. I think he has a point to a degree, Dan, that this is a Westminster bubble issue. But of course, look, the mainstream media are never going to let this go because, you know, they think that they're seeing the very early implosion of reform, a further split in the right. And the fact, and look, here's the narrative, if Nigel Farage can't keep a party of 5 parliamentary MPs together, how on earth is he going to do that with 100 MPs or 200 MPs, which is, the number of parliamentarians that it seems the wisdom says reform could potentially end up with in 2029. I think, look, we don't really know, do we, any of us, whether it be you, me or Charlie, whether, you know, Rupert Lowe is an aggressive bullying nutter, and you know, big question mark, big inverted commas, or whether Nigel Farage has felt threatened and has thrown him under the bus because of the Elon Musk stuff, and whereby he feels that Rupert Lowe is a threat. What is definitely true of Nigel Farage, and I have a lot of time for Farage in terms of what he has done to try to promote the centre-right and to try and get this country back on track with regard to immigration and so on. What is definitely true of Nigel Farage is he does find it very easy to fall out with people. Ben Habib, Howard Cox, Rupert Lowe, and so on. So there is, for me, a question mark there. But I don't think anyone will really know where the so-called fault lies here, Dan, but I am desperately disappointed and desperately sad that where we thought we had on the centre-right a battle between almost Reform and the Conservatives in terms of how they were going to kick out this useless, hapless, sensationally poor and damaging Labour government, we now effectively have got another split, and we've got to try somehow and decide and work out how we weld the right back together. We are incredibly good on the right of falling out with each other, aren't we? And it is so distracting and so counterproductive, particularly when you hear rumours, whether it's true or not, that the likes of Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe, who obviously talk and seem to be pretty kindred, might even be considering starting their own separate political party.
Potentially with lots of money from Elon Musk, which we will come to shortly. But Charlie Sansom, look, in terms of Russell's key point that we don't know what happened, well, I mean, I've done a lot of reporting on this over the past 2 weeks. What we do know is that there's no allegations of violence whatsoever against Rupert Lowe. He absolutely categorically denied in his exclusive interview here on Outspoken that he was suffering from early onset dementia and says that is just a disgusting smear that is being put around by Reform UK officials. So at the end of the day, Zia Yusuf did report him to the police for hurty words, and that does, I believe, go against everything that we thought Reform should have stood for. Now, what I would have liked to have seen from Nigel yesterday, Charlie, I don't know about you, is for him to take every question, tackle this head on. That's where he's meant to be different. I don't mind him being feisty with people like Beth Rigby because they are absolute hypocrites. But to just say, yawn, boring, to me, that's disrespectful because this issue matters amongst his base.
He had this air of arrogant confidence about him with the reporters, I found yesterday. But when he said to them that this is a fringe issue, it's on the outskirts, I disagree completely because, I mean, I was laughing when you were talking about how he was saying that it's new accounts online and this is a kind of a fabricated issue. It's not. There are so many people that support Rupert Lowe. There are so many people that want reform to stand for free speech. And at the end of the day, being accused of being messianic and then deciding to cast aside anyone who challenges you is pretty much giving credence to the criticism.
There's an irony there. Russell, what did you make of this whole thing of, these accounts are new? Now, reading between the lines there, my translation would be Nigel is trying to suggest that Elon Musk has given Rupert Lowe some sort of head start. He's effectively handing him an easier platform on X.
Yeah, that's a pretty thin and desperate argument, I think, to try and make it appear that Rupert Lowe is not popular. Rupert Lowe is very popular for very, very good reason, in that he is authentic, he is sensible. We all know he's done such things as to get elected as MP, not for the money, because he gives the money away, he gives his MP salary away. That man, I think, is one of very, very few genuine politicians in Britain with integrity. I hear rumours, and you may have heard the same, that Reform has lost 10 to 12,000 members over the last 5 or 6 days.
I have. And Russell, what's interesting about this, sorry, I want you to go on, but what's interesting about this, because what my reporting on this shows, I don't know if you've heard similar things, is that what's happening is that there's actually no actual proper mechanism for people to quit the party. So these emails are just stacking up in an inbox at the moment.
And lots of people have resigned their chairman positions within branches. And of course, that branch network has only just started to build up. I can tell you where I am in Brentwood and Essex, and up the road where Charlie is. A year ago, there was no branch network at all. So there was no ability to get out and leaflet, canvass, even to really find decent candidates. Reform had just got that sorted, and now that's all being jeopardised. But my supposition here, and this is just supposition, I don't know this as fact, but it seems to me, how about this, a bit of a coincidence that Zia Yusuf comes into Reform with money. I mean, some are saying he's bought his way into Reform. He's bought himself a chairmanship. And by complete coincidence, all of a sudden, Nigel Farage moves a bit to the left and decides that he doesn't now agree with mass deportations, which he has done for his entire career. And we now have, as you rightly point out, some kind of wokeism in their approach to their policy to such things as freedom of speech and hurty words. I wonder if the person really controlling Reform, not necessarily in a good way, is Zia Yusuf.
Very good question. And I guess you can't really open a police investigation against one of your MPs and then try and brush it off as a fringe issue, as if it's a minor squabble, when your boss, your chairman, has put him under police investigation. Breaking right now, Reform UK chairman Zia Yusuf has spoken out for the first time since the civil war in the party went public, suggesting that he wouldn't take a £100 million donation from Elon Musk, which just sounds like political madness to me. But before we get there, this latest row has exploded between the party's former deputy leader, Ben Habib, and current leader, Nigel Farage. Now, Ben has been asking some pertinent questions about Zia Yusuf. Let's be honest about that. He posted from political obscurity on the 30th of June 2024. Zia Yusuf went to chairman of Reform in 11 days, elevated by Nigel Farage. There is a peculiar and unexplained bond between these two men. It's Yusuf who is co-director and controller of Reform with Farage, not Tice as deputy. Something very wrong. But of course, lots of people say Ben is bitter because Nigel very clearly threw him under the bus. Watch.
What they've done with Rupert Lowe is absolutely outrageous. Instead of just, removing the whip, they've trumped up, as far as I can see, charges. They make it look like he had bullied people in his office, and actually when we scratched below the surface, there was no accusation against Rupert for any bullying. They've made a complaint to the police that he threatened to use physical violence against Yusuf, something apparently that took place in December, but it took them 3 months to make the complaint. They've set out to destroy Rupert Lowe. So this story isn't going away. And the reason Nigel refused to have any questions in the press conference is because this is not a Westminster bubble problem. This is a problem of very substantial proportions for reform, and he didn't want to have to answer questions on it in the press conference. But Rupert Lowe ain't going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Nigel Farage, frankly, having crossed that Rubicon, trying to destroy Rupert Lowe, is in a position where we are now going to challenge him.
Now, Nigel Farage hit back in ferocious fashion.
Used to be deputy of the party. No love lost between you two men anymore. He tweeted last night, people keep saying Rupert Lowe and I should stop fighting for our country. They say Nigel Farage is super famous. We should vacate the field and leave it to him. I think he might be referring to my Sun column last Friday. Here's the thing, he says, Farage is incapable of saving the UK. In office, he would do massive damage. We love our country. We'll fight on. Are you incapable of saving the UK, and would you do massive damage in office?
Is this the same Ben Habib who lost election after election? Is this the same Ben Habib who, when he was deputy leader of the party, failed to get any of the candidates vetted, which caused us such problems at the general election, and failed to get us to stand in more than 12% of seats last year? Is that the same fella?
Ben Habib hit back saying the same Ben Habib who had nothing to do with vetting. At least we didn't recruit Europhiles, Blairites and Liberal Democrats. That is a deliberate choice Farage has made. Then we come to Zia Yusuf himself, who's trying to get back on the front foot after becoming the absolute centre of discontent amongst party members. In a new interview with the brilliant Rob Moore and his Disruptors podcast, Zia Yusuf, speaking from Reform HQ, boasted about how closely he works with Farage.
My day-to-day, obviously, as you can imagine, it's incredibly varied, but it will usually start with catch up with Nigel, what's on the agenda today. Now, one thing about politics relative to business is because of the news cycle, there will just be things that hit your to-do list that are you just got to deal with. More so than happens in business.
Right. So you mean you're a bit more adaptable, less structured? You have to react more.
But we still always have to, and you'll probably notice here, most of the people in this office are actually not working on the news cycle over the next 24 hours. They're working on building things for the next month and the next year.
Yeah.
And that's a big advantage, I think, for us, because from what I can tell with the other parties, everyone's so short-term in politics.
Right.
They just care about winning the next news cycle in the next 24 hours. And look, I get that there's some importance to that.
Yeah.
He was then asked whether Elon Musk will still help Reform UK.
Help Reform be the next party in power?
I think so, on the basis that, at a minimum, he has been a hero with regards to protecting free speech in this country, without which it would have been very difficult for Reform to have even got to where we are today, because a lot of the common sense things that we say and Nigel and our MPs say would have been censored, full on censored under the old regime of Twitter, right? Saying that boys can't become girls, or our culture is better than many other cultures in the world. All of these sorts of things would have been full on censored. You wouldn't have been able to say them. Now, so yes, in that regard, he is obviously shone a very bright light on the grooming gangs in this country and the appalling cover-ups and the horrific things that have happened. No one did more, actually, to shine a bright light on that. And it forced the debate, which needed to be had and continues, and clearly much more needing to be done.
So all over Elon Musk there. But do you notice there's one name that Zia Yusuf just couldn't bring himself to say? And of course, it's Tommy and it's Robinson. Then, in perhaps the most unlikely portion of the interview, Zia Yusuf then says that he wouldn't want to take Elon Musk's £100 million anyway.
We have got serious interest from larger donors and stuff, but yeah, look, I'd actually be pretty uncomfortable and not that in favour of anyone giving us 100 million, any one individual giving us $100 million.
You think they'd have some demands? That money wouldn't come
because I think
demands.
I think, again, we live in the real world. Political parties need money, right? And but I'd say, particularly given he is basically part of the Trump administration, and look, I'm a huge Elon fan. As a tech entrepreneur, I've read almost every book, every bit of material I could to try to digest as much as I can his genius to the degree that I could. He's an amazing entrepreneur. I'd argue he's the greatest entrepreneur of all time.
to my superstar panel, Russell Quirke and Charlie Sansom. So, Charlie, so much to pull apart there. Firstly, do you really believe Zia Yusuf saying, oh, no, we wouldn't really want to take £100 million from Elon Musk. It's got nothing to do with the fact that he's now backing Rupert Lowe and Tommy Robinson. We just don't want his 100 mil.
Well, I think he might be being genuine because he is accused of buying his way into reform. So if you get Elon Musk on side, who will be a much bigger purchaser, if you like, he's going to have to answer to Elon, and reform will be beholden to the White House. That may not be what he wanted to get involved with reform for. So there might be some truth to that. Do I think that money talks? Absolutely. And I'm going to circle that to the Tommy comment you made, because I laughed when I heard Zia say that Elon's done more than anyone to raise awareness about the grooming gangs. He hasn't. He just has a lot of money. And maybe if Tommy Robinson was a 100 millionaire or 200 million pound in the bank, then maybe he'd get the credit for what he's done over the years. But he won't, because he comes from the working class background, and Elon Musk is an enigma. So they give him a platform which, you know, they wouldn't afford to other people.
And of course, he is funding Tommy Robinson's latest legal battle over his appalling solitary confinement at HMP Woodhill. I will be reporting on that court case on Thursday, which we first revealed was happening last week. But Russell Quirke, I certainly think this is difficult posturing, isn't it, from Zia Yusuf, because he's saying there, I really respect Elon Musk. I think he's the greatest businessman to ever live. But the problem is we're not addressing the elephant in the room, which is that he has said that Nigel Farage isn't up to being leader of Reform UK. So it's just not going to work, is it?
What would happen with Elon Musk is that he would make a donation conditional on Nigel Farage standing down, and no doubt, I think, you know, the writing is clearly on the wall. The leader of his choice, I'm sure we all know, would be Rupert Lowe. So I think that donation would come with strings attached. Should Reform take 100 million from Elon Musk? Absolutely, because outside of the formal election period, so whether it's the local elections coming up in a few weeks' time, or indeed the general election, you can spend whatever you like. So the ground that could be laid, the traction that could be got via Reform spending that money over the next year, 2, 3, 4 years in terms of what I would call in business brand building, creating noise and trust and credibility, would be absolutely phenomenal. And that actually could lead to a majority Reform government in the Houses, you know, by way of parliamentarian mix. But here's a supposition for us all to think about. I'm wondering, having listened to all of this over the last few days, and particularly that interview with Zia Yusuf today, if there are certain individuals, potentially Nigel Farage included, maybe almost certainly Zia Yusuf, that are seeing Reform not as a movement, not as a political party, but as a business. That would be a big reason not to take £100 million from Elon Musk on the basis that he would then want a shareholding, because we all know Reform is a limited company. Rightly or wrongly, I don't have an issue with that per se, but it would mean that 100 million would come in, and presumably Elon Musk would say, hey, look, as a result, like in any business investment, I want an 80% share in that business. So I'm wondering if that comment by Zia Yusuf, together with this seeming move to the left, which presumably is designed to encourage and enthuse more mainstream voters now that they've got to their 200,000 members, is this really a play just to entice more and more membership and therefore more and more money, more and more revenue? Is this, and this is a big question mark, I'm no conspiracy theorist, is this just a get-rich scheme for Zia Yusuf and Nigel Farage?
Well, it's a very good question. I mean, within the interview, he said that 90% of everything required to fund Reform UK comes from the grassroots, comes from those people who are paying the £25 membership fee. And of course, up until the sacking of Rupert Lowe, everything was going great. They had that live ticker. It was going up constantly. Now, the going's got tough. The ticker's going very, very slowly. And as you have revealed, Russell, 12,000 people wanting to cancel their membership, but there isn't actually a mechanism to even do that at the moment. So, Charlie Sansom, that's the Elon Musk issue. What about this personal acrimony between Nigel Farage and Ben Habib? because I didn't like it when Nigel celebrated Ben's departure in the first place. I didn't like the way Ben was thrown under the bus. I didn't like the way that his interview with Julia Hartley-Brewer was taken out of context. And to now try and blame him for the so-called vetting failures, I think Nigel has sort of got into his head that the fact that they had a few candidates who may have positively tweeted, for example, about Tommy Robinson in the past, that was the reason they didn't do well enough in the last election. But as Ben Habib points out, he wasn't even involved in vetting. And in fact, isn't there more concern now about the types of people who are signing up to the party, like this woman who until recently was in a hard left workers' party?
Yeah, I think trying to accuse Ben of not doing his job properly is a bit disingenuous. He may have been a part of the party structure when they were vetting candidates, but Richard Tice was the leader at the time. And whilst I won't divulge personal conversations, I have mentioned this to Nigel and how it looks. And that's as far as I'll go on.
Oh, go on. Tell us more. Is he, Charlie? Is he open to that idea? Is he listening?
What I did say to him was that the hope not hate intervention during their vetting process made the party look terrible. And whether or not he accepted that is for him to confirm or deny. But at the end of the day, Richard Tice was the one that I pointed the finger at and he didn't correct me.
Russell, I mean, you're a businessman. Do you think that it's fair to sort of almost do this offence archaeology and rule out people of ever having a political career with Reform UK just because they may have said something positive about Tommy Robinson once, which seems to be the standard that Nigel has now set?
But hang on, how can Reform bang on about free speech and how wonderful Elon Musk is, and then kick somebody out or curtail someone's speech, as apparently they did with Rupert Lowe's speech, stop people talking about Tommy Robinson and so on? It's supposed to be the epitome of free speech, Reform. I mean, that's what us on the centre-right are all about. It's about democracy and freedom and meritocracies and yet freedom of expression, freedom of congregation, freedom of speech. So it does seem to be rather diametrically opposed and hypocritical, doesn't it? But I also don't think that, given the rise of Reform and how Reform is resonating with a huge swathe of people in Britain, the fact that Nigel Farage, and others, you can say this of Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe as well, the fact that they're airing their dirty linen in public for the mainstream media then to pounce on and exaggerate even further, it is really amateur, and it's a really bad, poor look. Now, I know we're 3.5, 4 years away from a general election. God, if only it was just a few months away. Maybe some of this will be forgotten, but I think the damage in terms of the base, as we've talked about, party membership, candidates that are now maybe thinking twice about whether they want to stand for Reform. I mean, this is critical stuff. They've got to wind their necks in, all of them. And God, I hope that the likes of Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, Howard Cox, Nigel Farage, Zia Yusuf, if frankly he lasts, because of course the other rumour is that he's going to be out on his ear next. Just a rumour, but that's what we're hearing. I want these guys to reconcile for the good of not their personal egos, not their personal coffers, but for the good of this bloody country. That's what this whole movement was supposed to be about. I'm not seeing it. Are you?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Very, very well put. And of course, for so much more of this, my exclusive reporting, make sure you sign up to my Substack. www.outspoken.live is the address. Breaking right now, Nigel Farage has attacked Kemi Badenoch, saying her move away from nut zero is completely meaningless, given her party, the Conservatives, and her own position as an MP was to completely propagate the madness. So is this more just political posturing from the Tories, or should we take Kemi very seriously today? After all, she did make a video.
Net zero by 2050 is impossible. It is making families poorer, energy bills more expensive. Businesses, especially manufacturing ones, are closing because they cannot afford it. The plan we have today does not work. We need a plan that delivers cheaper, cleaner energy that is more secure, and that makes our environment better. Today, I'm launching the biggest policy renewal our country has seen in 50 years.
Not so fast, says Nigel Farage. Too little, too late, Kemi, giving you completely back Theresa May, completely back Boris Johnson when they decided to bankrupt the country for the sake of net zero. Watch his response.
Do you welcome the leader of the Conservative Party has come on board to what it sounds like very close to your policy?
Her fantasy. It's her fantasy. She is an independent backbencher. In 2015, voted for this, said that her constituents were delighted that she had done so. She then went on to vote for EV targets for cars and vans, which is now literally closing down the British car industry and over which we have to take rapid emergency action. She voted for legislation that is closing down our steel industry virtually as we speak. So she's one of the architects of this. She can't come along in a few years' time afterwards and say it's going to bankrupt us. I know. Richard Tice and I were telling you that back in 2015. So who do your viewers and listeners trust? Do they trust somebody who was the architect of this disaster and also, of course, far too high energy bills for everyone in the land? Or do they trust people that had the vision to see what a terrible mistake the whole
Isn't it
thing
better that any sinner repenteth?
No, because they'd let us down again. You know, if you elected them on that ticket, they'd revert back to where they were. We learned that in 2019. They pretended in 2019 they were believers in Brexit, believers in border controls, believers in backing British business, and did the opposite. They cannot be trusted. End of. They're careerists. They're not in this out of principle. They chop and change their mind, frankly, with the wind.
Okay.
So who does my superstar panel trust on this? Charlie Sansom and Russell Quirke with me. Russell, I have to say on this, and I may not have agreed with a lot of what Nigel Farage has done over the past 2 weeks, but on this, I am completely with him. Why would I trust the Conservative Party? Why would I trust Kemi Badenoch on net zero with some sort of weak, watered-down announcement that maybe it's just not going to be good enough by 2050? No, scrap the whole thing. But actually, you're never going to do that because your party put it in place.
Well, yeah, Kemi is, to say the least, a bit behind the curve, isn't she? And she's also been leader. Not only has she been leader for many, many months, and this is the first time she's really talked about this subject, but of course, yes, she, as Nigel Farage points out in your clip, she voted for the principle of net zero and indeed target. So there was a lot of stuff in the mainstream media today, Dan and Charlie, saying, oh, you know, Kemi Badenoch's come out and rubbish net zero. No, she hasn't. She's rubbished the targets and said that they're impossible to meet. What I want to hear the Conservative Party doing, if they are to be genuine Conservatives, as I think they should be, she should be talking about getting rid of net zero full stop, and talking about what an absolute waste of time, what a fantasy, what a deluded load of old nonsense the whole thing is. And look, let's not go into all the reasons why it's nonsense. I think they've been well rehearsed by most of us. But for a Conservative leader, effectively, she's kind of got a get out of jail free card here, because she's saying, I think 2050 is impossible. But if we were to elect her on the basis that we think what she means is net zero is something that should be kind of thrown out with the rubbish, as it should be. She's not said that. She could then easily get elected and say, oh, okay, well, what I meant was 2055. And then we stay on this Ed Miliband, mad, crazy, lunacy route, which is going to kill our economy, kill our industry, and is completely impractical and unworkable. So Kemi didn't go far enough. Nigel Farage is 100% right. Do we believe the Conservatives? Look, as a very, very senior Conservative said to me in a room that you were in, Dan, a few weeks ago, by the way, so you know who I mean probably, but I'm not going to reveal because it was done off the record. That particular individual said to me, as a former Conservative as they are, the Conservative Party are dead. I mean, and I truly believe that the Conservative Party have had their time, they've had their chance. There are too many Rishi Sunaks, there are too many Tobias Ellwoods, there are too many James Cleverleys in that Conservative Party, that far outweigh the likes of Robert Jenrick, frankly, and others that might actually be properly centre-right Conservative. There are too many of them to recover the Conservative Party. What we've got is a slightly more right-wing version of the Liberal Democrats in today's Conservative Party. They're done. They're finished.
Charlie, you quit the Conservative Party over their lockdown policy. But do you think actually there really was never enough criticism of Nut Zero either. I mean, Theresa May sort of snuck it in just before she was out the door. And actually, this was one of the most consequential and damaging policies the Tories have ever introduced.
Well, net zero was always shoved in after something far more important. So, COVID, Brexit, these things take precedence over something like idealistic politics such as net zero and zero emission car. I mean, to be fair, I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. I said when I was at school, this is how far back we're going now. I'm 36 years old, so we're going back at least 20 years plus. And I said to one of my teachers back then that global warming, the ozone layer, all the rest of it is just going to be used to tax us. And I see evidence of that everywhere now. So you can call me a prophet if you like. I'll be quite happy to take that title. But I did call this over 20 years ago when I was a child, that this was just a
clairvoyant, Charlie.
Tax policy. Yeah, clairvoyant, exactly. I'm going to try and get some lottery numbers for you guys. But the point is that I've been proven right about this, and I want to back up this with someone far more intelligent than myself. The former owner of the Weather Channel in America, which was bought by CNN, was invited onto CNN post-purchase to talk about climate change. He said that it was a complete hoax, and CNN cut him off. That says it all to me.
Russell,
I just say that there's been lots of people like that, haven't there? The likes of David Bellamy, the former boss of Greenpeace, all saying that this is, Charlie's right, this is just nonsense. It's not just about tax. It's even more sinister than that. It's about control. I think our politicians now demand that we have something to be fearful of. It was COVID, of course, for a period of time. It's immigration now. It's also climate change and net zero. They want us to be beholden, because the more fearful we are of life, the more they think we need to lean into the government and rely on the big state to make sure that we're okay. And look, we're calling it out, but will that make any difference? Will that change anything? I don't think so, because there's too many people that have been suckered into this black hole of nonsense.
Yeah, that is what it is. Can I just get a verdict from both of you on Kemi Badenoch as former Tories? She's not going to be fighting the next election, is she, Charlie? It's just impossible. Not good enough.
I don't think it matters who you install as Conservative Party leader. There won't be much of a fight.
Don't you think, Russell, that Robert Jenrick would put up a fight, though? I mean, the reason that I backed him in the Conservative leadership contest in terms of thinking that he should win is that I have this idea that we need to move the Overton window. And would this whole Rupert Lowe issue have happened within Reform UK if Robert Jenrick was the Conservative Party leader? I would argue not, because what he would have done, Russell, is force Nigel to move to the right on issues like mass deportations.
Well, if the Conservative Party were Conservatives, there would be no reform. I mean, at all. There wouldn't be any need for reform, because the Conservatives of my day, of Thatcher, and I am a proud Thatcherite, I don't know if you can tell, there would be absolutely no need for them whatsoever. Look, will Kemi Badenoch last? No. I think the membership, of which I am not one, I've actually resigned from the Conservative Party twice, actually. I think the Conservative Party made a mistake. Is Robert Jenrick the answer? He might be a better answer, but I don't think he's the answer. I'm old enough to remember a couple of years back when Robert Jenrick was not the centre-right maverick that he's now appearing to be when it comes to things like the ECHR and immigration and crime and so on. I think Robert Jenrick, he's good at looking authentic, but I worry that, again, he's just playing a part. He's playing the antithesis of what the party is, because he knows that the merry-go-round will come back and stop in front of him soon. But is Jenrick the answer? No, because the problem is the party. It's the parliamentary party. It's the wokist. It's the uber Lib Dems within the Conservative Party that have completely and utterly infiltrated it. And that's just, parliamentarians and MPs, let alone the Govites at the top, the Dougie Smiths and, the Lee Cairns of this world, the people that really control the Conservative Party that I think are still there, still controlling it, and effectively have destroyed it, So we're not going to see any change in the Conservative Party fortunes under any leader, whilst its DNA is not being particularly conservative.
I totally hear you on the Conservative Party, Where I disagree is on Robert Jenrick personally, and I'll tell you why. Because I think it's important that we allow people to go on, I'm going to sound all woke now, but to go on political journeys. And the example of that, which I think is the most important example in the world, and actually he may end up helping to save the UK and save the Western world, is JD Vance, who was a never Trumper at the start of his political journey, and over the past few years has realized the importance of those key MAGA issues like mass deportations. What an incredible vice president he has already been. And I see a little bit of Jenrick's journey in JD Vance's journey. Do you get what I'm saying there, Charlie?
Liz Truss was a Lib Dem.
Yes, she
Liz Truss
was.
A Lib Dem.
She was. But do you see that comparison, Charlie? Jenrick could be the British JD Vance?
No, listen, I love you, Dan, but I think you're reaching there, mate. I don't think there's any possibility of that happening at all. I'm quite sceptical of people that jump ship politically. I've never understood why people accept Labour defecting to Conservatives going Lib Dem, and Greens deciding to be, I don't know, BNP or some radical stuff like that. I've never understood it. I think that you have to remain principled, and I don't think people's politics change that much. I never much liked Liz Truss for that reason. Maybe that was cynical of me. Maybe she would have been great, but for that, because she was a Lib Dem, I thought, do you know what? I'm not sure if I trust her, and I would apply that to everybody. At least with me and Russell, we've left the Conservative Party, but if we were to join Reform, which I find unlikely, we'd still be on that side of politics.
But Charlie, you know what? We haven't moved our position for years and years and years. I'm still I'm an economic conservative. I believe in low tax, pro-business. I believe in restricted and controlled immigration. I believe in being tough on crime. So I'm an absolute conservative, like you are, in terms of the traditional labels. We haven't moved. The Conservative Party have. The party has moved, not us.
Yeah, that's right. You're absolutely right.
No, we're just sensible people in the centre who want to save this country. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Stand by Charlie Sansom and Russell Quirke, because, oh my goodness, the BBC, this is mad, the British Bashing Corporation, has forced one of its female presenters into a grovelling apology for calling Eddie Izzard a man. I'm going to show you this extraordinary exchange and the reaction to it. More reason why we shouldn't be paying the license fee in just 1 minute, so don't go anywhere. But first, attention, all the proud, the bold, and the beautifully bald. It's time to elevate your grooming gang with the Manscaped Dome Shaver Plus. Designed for precision, comfort, and a flawless finish, this shaver is the ultimate tool for keeping your dome as smooth as your best pickup lines. Whether you're maintaining a sleek style or embracing the shine with confidence, the Dome Shaver Plus has you covered. So head on over to manscaped.com, join the over 11 million men worldwide, including me, who trust Manscaped. Use the code Outspoken for 20% off your entire order and free shipping. Now, what's so incredible about the Dome Shaver Plus? This is a great gift, by the way, if you happen to have a man who may be a little bit bald as your partner or your husband or your son. What's so great about it is it adapts to their head's contours for a smooth shave without the mess and hassle of traditional shaving. There are 4 stainless steel skin-safe rotary blades which reduce nicks and cuts to deliver a perfectly bald look without uneven hair patches. And with Flex Adjust technology, every blade stays perfectly close to your scalp for a precise finish. The powerful 8,000 RPM motor delivers effortless shaving performance with less strokes and irritation. There's battery life of up to 60 minutes, which is a really good length of time as well. And it's waterproof, which means you can enjoy wet or dry operation. With a magnetic blade pad and hair chamber, cleanup is a breeze too, making sure your Dome Shaver Plus stays fresh and ready to deliver a smooth shave every time you need it. Grab the Dome Shaver Plus by the handle or palm and you will glide it across your head like you're sweeping away last year's regrets. So go to manscaped.com using the code Outspoken for free shipping and a whopping 20% discount on your entire order. Manscaped.com. Get the Dome Shaver Plus today and experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. But now, back to the show. Shame on the British Bashing Corporation. Shame on the BBC. Shame on this organisation that we have to pay for and that has forced one of its female presenters into a grovelling apology for calling a man a man. So this is all in regards to Eddie Izzard, who is a man, who sometimes calls himself a man, but in recent years has adopted this woke philosophy of trying, and don't get me wrong, most of the mainstream media play into his hands, trying to suggest that despite the fact he's got his tackle and balls, despite the fact that he has no idea about what it means to be a woman, that he should be referred to as a her and a she. I think this is complete madness. But let me just explain how this was reported. Anita Anand said she was very, very sorry after referring to Izzard as the man while presenting Radio 4's PM programme. Now, according to the Daily Telegraph, Izzard, who is 63, identifies as gender fluid, but uses she, her pronouns. However, Eddie Izzard seems to constantly change his mind on this because previously he said it didn't matter if people happened to call him he or she. What's more, this interview on the BBC was actually promoting him, shilling for him. He's in a production of Hamlet, which is touring the UK. And Izzard was actually pretty rude because when the presenter asked him to perform a snippet of the play for her listeners, he refused to do so. So in just one moment, I'm going to get reaction from our superstar panel, Russell Quirke and Charlie Sansom. But first, let me play you the two moments in action. First, here is the moment that Anita quite legitimately, in my view, described Eddie Izzard, a man, as a man.
Just to let you know that Charles Carroll's belly laugh, when I asked the man quite reasonably to do a bit and he just went, no, will be a thing I will never forget, Charles Carroll.
And then, 25 minutes later, the grovelling U-turn.
Now, a little earlier in the programme, you might have heard me accidentally misgender Eddie Izzard. I'm very, very sorry about that. The UK leg of Eddie's tour begins later this year.
Oh, with another plug. Accidentally misgender. No, you didn't accidentally do anything. You stated a biological fact. Quite rightly, there's been outrage over this. Leilani Dowding posted on X, why does anyone watch the BBC or still pay for a licence? Eddie Izzard is a man. Liz Kershaw, former great BBC DJ, wrote how times have changed. In the 80s, I was one of only 3 female DJs out of 28 on Radio 1 because women are biologically incapable of operating the studio equipment and listeners don't want to keep company with women. BBC Radio 4 presenter Anita Anand issued an apology for referring to Eddie Izzard as the man. The incident has sparked a broad discussion. And Adam Brooks posted in his usual no-nonsense Essex style, he is a sodding man. Why would you apologise for telling the truth? I'm sorry this world is falling apart. If you genuinely believe Eddie Izzard is a woman, you need some medication. Absurd. And Russell Quirke, these apologies are always absurd, aren't they? I could hear it in her voice. Anita Anand was losing the will to live, but she knew, Russell, she knew that if she didn't play the game, if she didn't do a U-turn, she could be out of a job.
The fact that across the world, what is it, 0.1% of the population are so-called transgender. And by the way, let's just be really clear. Should we just tell it how it is? There's no such thing as transgender, right? You're either a man that wants to look like a woman or a woman that wants to look like a man. But if you're a man, you're a man because of your chromosomes. If you're a woman because of your chromosomes. I think anybody that insists on identifying as a different gender, but equally also insists that other people see them as a different gender, I think they are mentally ill. I also think that the organisations like the BBC and the journalists, presumably, that willfully apologise, I think they've got mental health issues as well. We talk about this constantly, even though literally 99.9% of the world's population are not transgender and probably don't care what people identify as. The fact that we get so caught up in it And we're also very soon, don't forget, going to have the Online Safety Act, which effectively will mean that Anita Anand would have committed a criminal offence for what she did on the BBC yesterday and will be prosecuted and potentially imprisoned for saying he rather than she or they. It is truly through the looking glass stuff, isn't it? It's nuts.
It is completely nuts. I mean, it really is, Charlie.
I mean,
this is our public broadcast. I mean, that's what makes me so mad.
Well, if I was to say to you boys now, I'm a woman, call me Charlotte, and you didn't, and this is live and recorded, could I get you done? If I say right now, actually, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Probably they're looking for any excuse to let Russell and I up.
For the duration of this show, I am now a woman. I want you to refer to me as Charlotte, and if you don't, I'm going to get you both.
Off. You're a geezer, Charlie Sansom. You're a geezer.
I'm a geezer.
Hey, try walking into one of your local pubs as Charlotte. See what happens.
Oh,
I know where you live.
Yeah, exactly. But you see the point, right? If could I then get you in trouble for that? Because it's so whimsical and it's so flippant. It's like, well,
can we extend it? What if I want to identify as a hamster, or I want to let's really extend it. I'm a criminal that's done something wrong, and I want to identify as innocent. I mean, how far does this nonsense go?
I mean, both things could be true. You know, you've got the beady little eyes and you look a bit shifty. So,
but why are we indulging this claptrap? What? I mean, not us, but why does society indulge it rather than saying, look, if you want to dress as a woman and you're a bloke, that's fine, but don't impose your beliefs and your delusion on everybody else.
I've got an answer. Big business. The businesses decide the social landscape, I believe. I mean, I can't ever forget the Costa advertising where they did a cartoon mock-up of people having trans surgeries, having their breasts removed, etc. And I thought to myself, why would they pay for that? Who does that actually appeal to? And I think it's just this overarching sense of we must be seen to be nice. This need for it, this desire to be seen to be nice, which is why if you criticise anything which isn't
because Charlie, previously we all assumed that Costa Coffee were transphobic, right? So they had to make a statement. It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
I've never understood it, and I think that every year you get the gay month, Pride Month. I mean, why do you need a whole month to tell people you're gay? You get 1 day for fallen soldiers. You get a whole month.
But why do we need anything?
I know, but all of these months,
you're gay.
Yeah,
it's
and
fine.
all of these months are meaningless. Black History Month, International Women's Day, they are all totally performative, and I cannot stand it. I think,
Dan.
Yes, come on.
Sorry, what there isn't is a national day for white, straight, middle class, middle aged men.
Because you're finished. You're finished. Everyone wants you buried,
Russell.
Russell.
Every day. We are the most oppressive demographic in the world.
Yeah. What about working class white boys? There's no day for them, and they are literally the most deprived group in all of the United Kingdom, Charlie.
But we're the oppressors, Dan. We're the oppressors. Didn't you know?
Oh, I did.
Haven't you read the Guardian newspaper?
Charlie, you and your toxic masculinity, mate.
I mean, look, I think where the change came, though, is that you were forcing people who, Charlie is quite right to say, wanted to be kind into performing mental arithmetic that actually just didn't add up. And so I look at the example of both myself and Megyn Kelly, right? So to begin with, when Caitlyn Jenner, for example, decided that he was a woman, we thought, okay, let's be kind. Caitlyn Jenner's a decent person, right? So, okay, Caitlyn Jenner, we'll go with that. Then we started seeing what happened with the likes of Leah Thomas, destroying female sport. That was the moment for Megyn Kelly, and I totally get it. For me, it was when I was a columnist at the Daily Mail, and I had to write about this guy, Sam Smith. And I've known Sam Smith, right, for years and years and years and years. Gay guy, really nice gay guy, very camp, effeminate gay guy, bit of a modern day version of Boy George, right? But absolutely a man, a gay man. And I knew him personally. And at the Daily Mail, they'd start saying, in my columns, I couldn't refer to him as a he. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this they, them thing. I don't believe in it. It's impossible. So actually, the English language became so butchered because I couldn't use any pronoun for Sam Smith whatsoever. Then Sam Smith, because he didn't want to enter into the male category at the Brit Awards, or the female category, because he claims he's non-binary, whatever that means, actually got female categories removed from the Brit Awards. It actually happened, which means there is no longer a category for a female performer. And by the way,
and
there's
what does
been
that
a
say
need
about
for
women's
that.
rights?
Exactly, because
What
there's
does
been
that
a
say
need
about
for
the
that in the past,
suffragettes?
because men have dominated sometimes those categories at the Brits.
And he's white as well. He's a white man, so that also goes against him. So
yeah, I mean, I just thought at that point, I
I'm being-
can't do this anymore. I can't do
I'm
this
being
anymore. Maybe it
flippant.
isn't kind, Charlie. Maybe there are times
Maybe.
where it's not kind, but it's necessary. And I'm sorry, Eddie Izzard, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Sam Smith, I'm not doing it. I'm not playing these games.
You can identify as whoever you like and whatever you like, as long as it's, no pun intended, not rammed down our throats.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely. Dress up as a woman. Look, the thing is, guys have always dressed up as women, actually. If you go right back through history, there is a long history of that. And certainly in terms of my lifetime, like I was a kid who grew up in the 1980s, and Boy George was one of the biggest pop stars. So this idea that it has been impossible for men to connect with their feminine side if they want to and wear a dress is just bullshit. It's just not true, because they have been able to. But Boy George wasn't asking anyone to call him a woman. Boy George wasn't asking the Brit Awards to remove the female categories. It's this insanity and arrogance of woke.
And you use Caitlyn Jenner as a really good example, because Caitlyn Jenner now wants to be known themselves as a woman, because, you know, they, he, she, whatever pronoun you want to choose, let's say he, wants to be known as themselves a woman, i.e. they feel that way. But what Caitlyn Jenner doesn't do is impose that on other people. Famously, if you misgender Bruce as Caitlyn or Caitlyn as Bruce, that Caitlyn stroke Bruce, this is getting confusing, they don't care, right? They're not going to hold a gun to your head or punch you or shout at you or go to HR or sue you or ring the police because you might have mistaken them. And let's be honest, there are a lot of fellas that dress up as women. They don't look like women at all. They look like blokes in wigs with lipstick on. So if you call them a bloke by mistake, it's because they still look like a bloody bloke.
Indeed. And Caitlyn Jenner, by the way, one of the biggest proponents in terms of keeping men out of women's sport, despite the fact that Caitlyn Jenner is a trans person himself.
Woman.
But he still took an award for Woman of the Year less than a year after being a woman.
I think he regrets that now, to be honest. I do. But yes, very, very good point. Very good point. Goodness me, it is mind-bending, isn't it? Charlie Sansom, Russell Quirke, always love having you, my superstar panel. Thank you both so much. And thank you to you for your company today. We're going to get to Greatest Britain and Union Jackass in just a moment. But first, I've got to see what you've been saying during the show. Let me dig in. Victor Meldrew writes, Reform have said they will not deport anyone that is here now or comes in by 2029. Why do we want to vote for that? Still on the Reform civil war, Stephen Morley wrote, like it or not, Nigel, if you don't change your stance over Rupert and mass deportation, you're absolute toast, pal. So he's been pretty tough. James Slater wrote, this is what happens, Nigel, when you take your support for granted. You stabbed Rupert in the back and now you are going to pay dearly for it. The British public are not fools. Wow, you're angry, Nigel, today. Trish says Zia is pulling Nigel's strings. He's changed since Zia joined the party. Scotty John writes, I don't think Trump gives a shit about Farage or he'd have pointed Elon in his direction. I believed in Farage, but recently I really don't like the noises he's making. He's moving to the less. SJ on this whole membership thing, because it's very interesting, is that Russell Quirke, here's 12,000 people, have asked to cancel. And SJ says, well, I have asked to cancel my membership and have so far been ignored. So I suspect there are quite a few more cancellations that aren't reported. Oh, absolutely. There's no mechanism to cancel your membership. Apparently, it just ends up piled high in an email inbox. Susan Dow says, Farage trying to minimize his mess, and she's uppercased his. This isn't a fringe issue of no importance. If he has integrity in anything, he'd face his mess and shocking treatment of a sound colleague. And Highland Owl said, Reform wanted to bin Rupert without any backlash. They have made serious criminal allegations and are now trying to wave it off as a minor disagreement because they were not prepared for the avalanche of backlash. They have made a total cock-up of this inner party hit job. So, oh my goodness. Nigel's not going to like that feedback, is he? Absolutely not. Thank you for it, though. Let me get to the nominations now for Union Jackass. These are all nominated by you, by the way. Just join the Dan Wootton Outspoken Club on X. That's how you can give us your ideas every single day. I love them so much. James Timpson, nominated by It's Only Me 44, the prison minister, for keeping 10,500 foreign criminals in prison instead of deporting. Liz Kendall, nominated by Hills Hunter 01. Of course, she's announced these benefit changes today, but Hills Hunter says it's because she's shouty and angry all the time. See her statement in Parliament today. It's exhausting just watching her. And nominated by Not Aravich, Nadine Dorries, for her wicked hit piece in the Mail about Rupert Lowe. And she has described him in this piece, by the way, as Britain's most far-right MP. And I usually like Nadine Dorries, but I think this piece on Rupert Lowe was so unfair. I really, really do. Okay, this was a tight one today. James Timpson, the prison minister, gets 29% of your vote. Liz Kendall, 30%. But wow, Nadine Dorries, today's Union Jackass, over her Rupert Lowe hit piece, 41% of you giving her your vote. A very special Greatest Britain today. Nominated by Andrea Draper, 84. Sorry, Ian Draper, 84. Sorry, Ian. Ian Draper, 84. And thank goodness you made this nomination of Paddy Hemingway, the last surviving Battle of Britain pilot who has died at the age of 105. Now, his story is incredible. Originally from Dublin, he joined the RAF as a teenager. At just 21 years of age, fought in that pivotal 3-month aerial battle against Germany, becoming one of the few honoured by Winston Churchill. And of course, we've seen everyone from Prince William to the Prime Minister pay tribute to his bravery and acknowledge his generation's sacrifices in securing freedom after he passed away peacefully on Monday at the age of 105. And I don't know about you, but this feels like a shocking end of an era, because I loved the fact that when I grew up, I had my grandparents' generation there, and 3 out of my 4 grandparents fought for the United Kingdom in World War II. And I worry that this country is going downhill at a time when we have lost their wisdom and the way that just what they went through as teenagers, as young people, was able to put so many of our problems into perspective. So a brilliant choice for Greatest Britain today, but one that actually makes me feel incredibly sad. Rest in peace. Paddy Hemingway, the last surviving Battle of Britain pilot who has died at the age of 105. Okay, the Uncancelled After Show is up next on Substack, www.outspoken.live. Our royal mastermind, Angela Levin, will be with me. So at this stage, we move off YouTube and Rumble. We move to our own platform to continue the conversation in the Uncancelled After Show, www.outspoken.live. We are back tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time. I think it's still 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. I do need to check that, though, but that's because we still have the daylight saving time difference. Really looking forward to being with you tomorrow, but make sure you hit subscribe right now on YouTube and Rumble if you're watching there. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you, but I hope to see you on the after show on Substack in just one moment.